I would love to answer any and all questions about this book or any other book or my personal life, really anything at all. And I have to say, I've gotten some really great questions. So, Jerry, yes.
It's a bestseller. It's number 2.
Number 2.
It's not. I know, appropriately number 2. I'm always surprised when my books are bestsellers. Absolutely, yeah. It's very bizarre to me.
Mary, could you repeat the question?
Oh, sure, yeah, sure, yeah. Yes.
In all your research, have you encountered the sources or the cause of nausea, continuous nausea? It's related to the alimentary system, I presume.
Continuous nausea.
Yeah. Recurring nausea.
Oh, yeah. No, I haven't. The book is really more about the normal, healthy equipment. I didn't go off into the world of ailments because that's 10 whole books. So no, I don't know. I talk about in Packing for Mars. I have a chapter on space motion sickness and nausea, but I'm not familiar with continuous or continual nausea. I hope that you don't have that.
But my wife had it after a case of food poisoning, and from then on.
And from then on?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so the doctors are all perplexed that we don't know the answer.
Wow.
There's so much medication that finally I said to the primary care physician, she's been receiving enough medication to put anybody in a state of nausea.
Yeah.
And then he started dropping it down.
Yeah.
Relinquished it. It's over-medication, having gone 3 doctors.
Yeah. So is she feeling better now?
Feel better now.
That's good. Good. I'm glad. Yes.
After doing the research for your chapter on organs, do you find yourself eating more organs?
Oh, yes. Organ meats. Variety meats. Yes. Do I find myself eating more organ meats? I've always been fairly open-minded when it comes to organ meats. You know what? The one that I had a problem with is tongue, which is a variety meat. It's not really an organ, but I think it was the. I was fine with it until I learned it was tongue, and then I had this sensation of like I was tonguing a cow. And I could taste the buds. The kind of the surface of it was very disturbing, and I had to stop. But I like sweetbreads. I've even eaten brain. I like brain. Liver, kidneys, lamb's kidneys. I don't think I've ever had that. But anyway, but because I know how they're very good for you. There's a lot of nutrients in them. So I've always been okay with organs. Okay with organs. That's my slogan. Okay with organs, Laura.
I'm curious about tonsils. I haven't read your book yet. But, people just sort of get them out. What are tonsils?
Tonsils. I didn't address the tonsils. I don't know about tonsils, but tonsils seemed like one of those things. That got very. There was a lot, sort of an enthusiasm for taking them out, for seeing a problem and taking them out, and also mitral valve prolapse. There was a period of time where everybody had mitral valve prolapse, and everybody had to take antibiotics when they went to the dentist. And tonsils seemed like they were yanking them out over nothing. I don't know. And of course I'm thinking, oh yeah, because they could make money from hospital stay. The ice cream company was in on it too. Anyway, tonsils. I don't know anything about tonsils. In the way back, yeah.
Hi, well my question is more of to do with your first book, and it's not really a question, it's more of an update. I was wondering. The very last chapter in Stiff, you talked to this woman, this Swedish woman, who was doing that movement to have our bodies frozen with nitroglycerin. What happened with that?
Suzanne V. Masick, yeah. The question has to do with Stiff. There's a woman who came up with a process where you would compost. It was a complicated human composting process where you flash freeze the body and you break it down with a kind of vibration. And then those pieces would be put in a cornstarch coffin, buried about that deep, and then a plant planted that would take up the molecules. And a tremendously positive reaction. Everybody, I heard from a lot of people, like, when is this going to happen? I'd love to do that. It's still not.
Wow.
I know, 10 years ago, this was when I was visiting her, and she hasn't given up on it, and she's got like 7 bodies in a freezer in Stockholm waiting to go, including, I think, her mom. So hopefully she'll get it up and running. I'm not sure that the equipment is complex. It's not a simple, I don't know exactly what's going on, but it's still, the gears are still turning, but not yet ready. Yeah. Yeah.
We know everybody on Earth has the same digestive system, but over the years, evolutionarily, is that a word? Are there differences in people that live on mainly diets of whale blubber and people that live on, I mean, are there differences depending on surroundings or race or anything like that?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm probably, but I'm not. You mean like, are they more adept at breaking down certain nutrients? I would imagine so. I didn't look into that, but I would think there'd be some subtle differences in that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you keep in contact with your interviewees? Like, will Rodriguez be getting a Christmas card?
I do. I'm not all of them, but I am still in touch with just probably 2 or 3 from every book. I'm still in touch with folks from this book. Rodriguez, of course, I don't have his cell phone number. On his cell. But I do, when my husband and I drive down to LA sometimes, and when I pass the turnoff for Avenal, I'm like, oh God, I should bring him a book. So I do want to stop off. They restrict. I mean, you can't believe the bureaucracy for getting a book into the prison library. They had one of my books. I was very excited. I think they had Stiff in the prison library there, and I wanted to make a donation of my other books, and there was an unbelievable amount of paperwork. I'm just forget it. But I would like to get it to him because I think he'd get a kick out of it. Yeah. So yeah, I do try to keep in touch with people from my books. Yeah.
You tell us that tomorrow is National Hairball Awareness Day. And I wonder,
you're right.
Is it celebrated?
Yes. Tomorrow is. Thank you for pointing that out. Tomorrow is National Hairball Awareness Day. How is it celebrated? I think the National Library of Medicine, the museum there, they're the ones that got it rolling, and I'm sure that they've got a kick-ass event surrounding hairballs from different species. Human trichobezoar, I'm probably saying that wrong, who cares? Which is it's like having an otter inside you. It's this big, hairy, long thing that sticks out. It's this horrifying thing. So I think probably have some of those on display. Don't eat your hair. I'm just saying that, people. Don't eat your hair. So yeah, I'm not sure, other than probably stuff going on at the museum, National Museum of Medicine, or whatever it's called. Yeah, but you can make your own fun. Sky's the limit. Yeah.
I forgot that I was thinking this when I was reading the book, and I know you were posting some stuff on Twitter if things didn't make it in, but did you ever look into like tapeworms and how things like that survive? I don't think you covered that.
I didn't cover tape. I looked into. I have a chapter that started with Jonah. Okay, it started with like, could you survive? Is there any species of whale or big fish that you could survive inside for any length of time? And then I moved on to, can any prey survive and even prevail and kill its captor? So I went on to there. I didn't go all the way down to parasites and things that we know can survive. It was more like, can the underdog vanquish and defeat the foe? So interesting, I just got an email from a woman who found a roundworm. Her baby was passing a roundworm. She sent an image to me, and I'm like, ah! She thought it was an earthworm. I'm like, no, I happen to know an earthworm won't survive in gastric acid. I know that for a fact. It's in the book. I don't need to know why, but I know. So I could tell her, I'm telling you, it was not an earthworm. She came back to me later. It's a roundworm. Yeah. So, yeah.
Have you decided which direction you're going to go after this book?
I'm looking into something, but I'm not quite sure. It's only like halfway there, but it's still open to ideas. Yeah.
You mentioned your publicist from the Funny Story.
Yes.
That. I think it was The Daily Show. I think I saw you recently.
Yeah.
And you got some funny reactions out of Jon Stewart. Any other stories of interviewees or interviewers rather that you?
Well, I was on Fresh Air for the first time in my career, and that was I had a fair amount of trepidation because I just thought, first of all, she hadn't had me on. I just assumed she doesn't like me because it's been 10 years. And I thought somehow, for some reason, she's having me on. But I thought, well, she secretly doesn't want me on. So I was, and a friend of mine had bet me that I wouldn't. Jeff Greenwald, you know him. Okay, we had this bet, and I said, if she says something appropriate that enables me to say this, I'm going to say it, and that is, Terry, gross. and at a certain point in the interview, she goes, and this doesn't make it, sadly this was cut, but she said, have you ever had a rash or a growth on your body that is so strange and so disgusting that you just can't imagine that your body produced that? And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. Terry, gross. Silence. Actually, she said, yeah, I guess my name's kind of weird too. That was fun. I was impressed. She was like, let's talk about hooping. Like, Terry Gross, yeah. Okay, let's do that. So it was a tremendous amount of fun, and I don't know what I was expecting. I thought it would just be a little more prim or less relaxed. But she was lovely. She was lovely. So, yeah.
So I think like everybody here, I've read all of your books, and each one of them, I never knew I was interested in that subject until I read the book.
Yeah.
So have you ever taken a subject, started it, and then said, no, I'm not doing this?
Have I ever taken a subject, started it, and said, nah, I'm not doing this?
Or it wasn't as
sometimes I take a subject for a chapter and I drop it because there's more interesting things. Like when I start a book, there's things that I think are good. Like I thought I was going to have a chapter in here about pica, which is eating things that aren't food. Like clay is the most common one, and there's a woman who wrote an entire book on this who was studying women in Zanzibar who when they're pregnant eat clay, and I was like, oh, I want to go to Zanzibar. Let's do. But that didn't quite work out, and it was a little too, like I had mentioned to someone earlier that to you that I'm looking more at like the normal process, the normal food processing process. So that one was a little bit of an outlier, so I dropped that. There was a few things that I think I'm going to put in a book, and I don't. Yeah.
Your interview with Terry Gross flowed really well and was fun. What makes for a difficult interview, and how do you handle or prepare for that?
The question is, the interview with Terry Gross flowed smoothly and was fun, unlike what I just said. And what makes for a difficult interview? A difficult interview is simply when somebody hasn't read any of the book or the table of contents or even the back cover and thinks that it is a book about something very different, and it's live and they're asking you something that is unrelated and you don't have an answer, but you have to have an answer. So that's not a fun interview. And it's not common, because usually, you just read the table of contents and it'll be perfectly good. I'm kind of a self-basting turkey, all you gotta do is say, so let's talk about Jonah and the stomach. Okay, and I'm off and running. But when somebody comes at me with, let's talk about the incidence of gluten insensitivity and celiac, and no, let's not. That's a different author. He's down in the green room somewhere else. It's not me. Yeah, so that's a difficult interview. Dan?
You didn't answer whether men or women are more flatulent.
Oh, yes.
I don't want to take it.
Oh, yeah. Right.
To reading the book, but.
Right, men or women are more flatulent. Well, what Michael Levitt says is that women on average have a slightly higher concentration of hydrogen sulfide. However, men make up for that in the larger on average volume of each passage. So basically, I think it's a wash. And the whole thing about women having a higher concentration of hydrogen sulfide is the stuff that stinks, and it's a tiny, tiny percentage. Most of flatulence is hydrogen and methane, which both are odorless. You can detect a few parts per million of hydrogen sulfide because it really stinks. That rotten egg smell. But it entirely depends on what you eat. If you eat a lot of red meat and cruciferous vegetables, then you produce a lot of hydrogen sulfide. So to me, diet it's much more to do with diet than gender. But anyway, that's what Michael Levitt claims, and he wrote 34 papers on Plato. So who am I? Who am I to question him? Yeah.
So if it's hydrogen sulfide
yes.
that is the stinky stuff, why don't all farts smell the same?
Excellent question. If it's hydrogen sulfide that's the stinky stuff, why don't all farts smell the same? Because there are actually 3 sulfur compounds that are the main culprits. There's methanethiol, and there's a methyl mercaptan, and there's another. So there are, it's like a little gang of sulfur compounds that kind of hang out and stink it up. And people have different, also it depends on what bacteria you have. So it's a combination of the bacteria you have in there and what you feed the bacteria. And there are, since there's a handful of those sulfur-containing compounds, you have this ever-fluctuating bouquet from day to day and person to person. There was a quote, and I don't think this is quite true, but this is again Kligerman, the quotable man. He said, an individual's gas smell, no, he said, a person's gas smell is as individual as a fingerprint. So, yeah, there you go. Way in the back.
So you sort of touched on this with a few of the other questions that were already asked, but from book to book, how do you choose where you're going to head next?
From book to book, how do I choose where I'm going to head next? Sometimes there's a kernel of one book. The seed of one book is in the previous book. That happened with Packing for Mars. There was a footnote in Bonk that at the last minute I yanked it because I wanted to use it in the next book, Packing for Mars. And sometimes I just come across, for Bonk, which has to do with sex labs and people studying arousal and orgasm in a laboratory setting. Awkward. That was just me. I was reading, and I have no idea why. I don't read Film Quarterly, but I was reading Film Quarterly, and they made a reference to the colposcopic films of Masters and Johnson. And I was like, colposcopic, isn't that something they do when they take a cervical body? Is that what I think it is? Are they filming women from the inside of their vaginas? And lo and behold, yeah, they had a phallus with a penis with a camera and a light source, and they were documenting female sexual arousal, the whole sexual response cycle. And part of it, of course, with women is happening inside, and they had made this phallic camera and put it on a motor housing so it would go like that. Like in the 1950s, okay, sex research, that's my next book. It was at that precise moment I knew that is my next book, absolutely. So it depends, you know, it's all over the map where I get my ideas. Yeah, Kate, hi.
What was the kernel of inspiration for this one?
The kernel for this one, well, actually there was a grouping of kernels. One was that years ago I had the Beano trip. Okay, this was for a magazine called Health, Laura, you know Health magazine. And I had so much fun material, and I had an editor who just didn't really want the fun material in there. And I was like, this is like you're taking out the best part, just like the journalists lament. You're taking out the best part. I'll get you back one day. I'll write a book. So I had that material. I also had I had some material that I never got to use, and I also. Packing for Mars, I had so much fun with the zero gravity toilet chapter, and people loved that chapter. And I took it to a level. I'm so proud of that chapter. I mean, I'm just well beyond the waste management engineers at NASA are phenomenal. They're the heroes, the unsung heroes of space travel. So that was a really fun chapter. So there was a cluster of things, and I thought, what would be the umbrella topic? So sometimes it's just I have the stuff before I have the topic, and then I think, oh, okay. The alimentary canal. Why didn't I think of this before? It's right under my nose, sort of, and in my nose. So, yeah.
You mentioned that you have the maturity of a 12-year-old boy, which I appreciate, because I'm about there. And I was wondering, do you think in the last 10 years writing all these books that you've gotten more or less mature?
Have I gotten more or less mature? I think that I'm about as immature as I've always been. Sometimes I get self-conscious about it, but I think I'm pretty stable. I don't think you can get any more immature for a middle-aged woman. So, yeah, I think I'm holding steady. Other people might disagree. Any more questions? Yes.
The coast-to-coast interview that you did was so much fun to listen to.
Yes.
And I was just curious. curious, during the commercial breaks, do you talk with the host?
Yes, the question has to do with Coast to Coast AM. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Coast to Coast AM, but it's a 3-hour show, and it is, what is it, 11 to 2 on the West Coast.
10 to 2.
10 to 2, yeah.
And then it repeats.
Right, and it is conspiracy theory and alien abduction and survivalists, and it is the most fascinating show. I really recommend tuning in. I do the Saturday night show, which is Ian Punnett, who's not the main host, so we don't have to talk about conspiracy theory and alien abduction, which with a book on the alimentary canal is not easy to talk about. So, but you asked, are you talking with the host during the breaks?
Yeah.
No, you're hearing all those weird ads. You're just on hold for 10 minutes, listening to what everybody's listening to, which is, ads for, survivalist medical kits and miracle cancer cures from Mexico, and I love that show. It's very America. But the guy who does the Saturday night show is a little less weird than Greg Norrie, who does Monday through Friday. Yeah. Okay. One more question, or are we all? We're all done. Okay. Thank you.